Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to teach you how to make a DIY Dollar Tree American flag crossbody bag. It's a sewing project. You're going to need 2 packages of these bandanas. They're American flag bandanas with red or black blue on the other side. You're going to need this dog harness. I happen to find a red, white, and blue, which is pretty exciting, and a matching dog leash. And if you can't find the red, white, and blue one, you can always get one of the other ones and take the ribbon off. These dog leashes sometimes come with a decorative ribbon on them. And what we're going to do from the harness is we're just going to take off 2 D-rings. And we're going to keep some of the netting, the webbing sewed on it, basically. And we're going to use these to attach the handle to the bag. Okay? And there's still plenty of material on that harness left over for other projects. So it doesn't seem like a waste. And as far as the leash is concerned, open the package. That's all that takes. Okay? So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to open both packages of the handkerchiefs. Now, these American flag handkerchiefs are made out of polyester. They're not a very strong material, and if you're going to sew these with your sewing machine, you want to make sure you get a fine needle so that you don't snag the fabric. I started with a regular needle and realized that that was going to happen. And then you can pick the red or blue lining, the red or blue bag to go on the lining if you want. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to put these in the same direction. Normally we would sew right sides together or wrong sides together. This time we're going to sew both flags with the flag in the upper left hand corner. So layered evenly on top of each other. This flag fabric, this bandana, is a homespun fabric, meaning that the pattern is on both sides evenly. There is a slight variation to the color on the inside, but not enough to make a huge difference, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to pin around 3 sides, both sides and the bottom. Now, like many things at the Dollar Tree, this is not a perfectly made product. So I did notice that one of the long bottom sides was a little wonky, and one of the one of the bandanas had a wonky bottom, let's put it that way. So what I did was I compensated, and I just made, I'm going to sew a straight line, and I'm going to level it out with the red stripe on the bottom, so I'm not really worried about the wonkiness. We're going to step it up a little bit, and we'll adjust that when we sew. Now, this is another project that can be hand sewn. If you can sew a straight stitch, this would be really cute for anybody with any sewing skills. I'm taking the tags off because I feel like they annoy me. I'm sorry, that's all. I'm taking that extra step to take the tags off. Now, these blue bandanas, which I decided to go with the blue lining, also very wonky. But you want to sew the blue bandanas right sides together. So I'm trying to match them up to get the best square I can. And actually, you can kind of tell this one that's wonky that the pattern is a perfect square that is just like cut crooked, basically. So you work with yours, you adjust them to try to get 2 evenly matched bandanas the best you can. And since they're the same size as the American flags, you want to make sure you give the same seam allowance. So if you have to adjust the seam allowance for one, you make sure you adjust the seam allowance on the other, which I did not do, but you learn from my mistakes. But it's okay. I'll show you how to fix it in case you didn't do that, or if you can't do that, or if something happens. And again, this one we're going to pin 3 sides. So I made the top where I'm not going to sew. I made that line up evenly. Then I pinned around the other 3 sides. Okay? And then we're going to take this to our sewing machine. I put a burgundy thread because the only thread you're really going to see is the very, very top finish edge, and then however we sew the buckles on. Otherwise, you're not going to see the thread. So if you have other thread you can use, it's fine. So I'm sewing this on a straight stitch with a number 2 spacing. And again, I mentioned before, if you can kind of see that the fabric is kind of pulling on the bandana. I mean, it's not the worst thing in the whole world. And you can't really notice it on the lining fabric. It's just really when you start to sew the flag, I switched to a finer needle so that it wouldn't pull on the fabric as much. Okay? And we've done Sewing 101 before. This is just straight stitching. Like I said, I'm trying to use an even seam allowance. I used about What I decided to do for this is I did about 1 inch from the pattern to make it square. And then with the American flag, I basically did just a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but then I adjusted and fixed the bottom. So the American flag ended up being a little bit wider than the blue lining, but I'm going to show you how we can fix that if that's something that happens to you, okay? And I was just showing you there, on the American flag, I basically took the factory stitches that they sewed, and I just ran that across the side of the presser foot, okay? And remember how we always did corners, you stop and then you turn, pivot. Sorry, that's for my friends' families. My peeps who like Friends. Okay. So again, sew around all 3 sides, and this is going super fast because you guys have seen how the sewing works. This one is more about the pattern and how I work out a problem of mismatched linings. I never made bags before I met Sissy, Lisa's sister. She taught me how to make my first bags, and it was so awesome. But what I'm doing now is I'm showing you that I liked it to be a fold-over body bag. It's just going to be a big, giant bag with like a fold-over section. And I was just trying to figure out where I want my rings to go. So I was just playing around with how much I want it to fold over. The reason we put the flags the same, the 2 bandana flags the same on top of each other, is so when we fold it over, it still looks like an American flag to the people who are looking at you. Of course, if I flipped it over and I wore it backwards, it wouldn't. But if you flip it over, you see it still has an American flag feel. All right, and then all I'm doing is I'm marking where I want the rings to land. So I'm marking where I want the bottom of the rings right there to land on the flag. I mean, like on the fold over top. Sometimes I just don't have the words. Here, let me show you. So where I want the bag fold over, okay, where I want the top of the fold to be is where I want the D-ring to land. So imagine then if you pulled on the D-ring, you want to be able to have the bag flop over just in the perfect place. So I'm just pinning this. I'm trying to pin it to stay on there. And then we're just going to sew it. So how we're going to sew it is, when you're sewing the straps on a bag, you want to sew, opposite. So let me just show you what I mean. We want the D-ring to eventually poke up towards the opening of the bag. We want to sew it towards the bottom of the bag first. And we're going to sew it far away from the D-ring. Because what we're going to do is we're going to double over, and we're going to give extra strength to the fastener, to the ring, so that it really holds for a very, very long time. Okay? And what I'm using is a combination of straight stitching. So I did like 3 or 4 passes of the straight stitching back and forth. And then I switched to a zigzag stitch, and I did 2 or 3 passes of the zigzag stitch back and forth. And then you fold the ring back up, and then you repeat with zigzag stitches and then finish with straight stitches. Does that all make sense? I hope it does. So here, I've just switched to zigzag, and I'm going very slowly, as you can see. You want to take your time, all right? And we're going to do, like I said, 3 or 4 passes back and forth with the straight stitch, and then 2 or 3 passes back and forth with the zigzag. And then we're going to fold the ring up and fold it back on itself, and then repeat 2 or 3 straight stitches and then 2 or 3 zigzag stitches. You see that there? And this is in real time, so that's how slow you really need to go. Unfortunately, if you go through this many layers and go fast, you can break your needle, which is actually what happened to me when I sewed on the last strap a few minutes ago. My needle broke. What I was too vigorous, and I was pushing, not waiting for the needle to come down in the right spot, and then the needle grabbed onto the sewing machine, which happens sometimes. But that was the first needle that I broke on this machine, and I've had it for 5 years, which is pretty good. I hope that helped a little bit. So here you go. You can see it when we first sewed it. Now you want to make sure you sew it on just the American flag portion. But you could actually sew the lining in first and then add the handle afterwards. I just like to be able to, make it look more professional. But I don't think it would have made a difference. We could have sewed the lining in first and then added the handle afterwards. But I wanted to add the handle inside first, just in case. And now what we're doing is we've turned the American flag portion inside out, and we've stuck it inside the lining. The lining has remained right sides together. Because the lining will be right sides together and stay right sides together, so when you look into the bag, you'll see the right sides of the handkerchief. So what we do is we basically just turn the outside portion inside out and put it, like you would put a pillow in a pillowcase. And along the top edges, we went ahead and we pinned all around, just making sure you leave an opening. Now, I forgot that I was leaving an opening, and I did not leave a very big opening, so I had a little difficulty turning the bag right side out. But, just leave yourself a good 4 inches, and we're going to sew that closed at the end anyway. But I just thought it was funny. I can't believe I totally forgot. I totally forgot. Oh, boy. You can see here I'm trying to pull this bag. I'm trying to turn this bag to get inside out through this tiny, tiny opening. I started out by pulling the 2 rings through and then just really working diligently, slowly. As fast as it looks here, it was really slow because I didn't want to rip it open more, and I could have just gotten my seam ripper or my scissor and made the opening bigger, but that would be just too easy. I want to show you guys how you can overcome if you just have a little patience and perseverance. Okay, and what you're gonna end up with is this like giant tube with this tiny slit, and it's gonna be the 2 handkerchief portions of the bandana print and the 2 handkerchief portions of the American flag print just folded together. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to turn the lining inside the bag. I'm poking out the corners, and I'm poking out the corners of the American flag, and I'm in that little hole that I just left open. You want to do that before you sew it closed. And now I'm turning the lining in, and I'm grabbing the top edges, and I'm just shaking it open basically. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pin around. When we worked with the blanket, I talked to you guys about like rolling the blanket edge so that you could see more of the white and less of the pink. Well, it's the same thing here. So you're going to kind of roll it so that you want the American flag outside edge. Oh my gosh, I just can't use words. You want the outside of the bag to be a tiny bit higher than the lining. So when you sew it and when you fold it over, you won't see the blue sticking out. Okay, that's really what I was trying to say. So I'm just rolling it ever so. I'm trying to open up that area, and then I'm pinning it closed with the red just a little bit higher than the blue. Okay, does that make sense now? I hope it does. Now, as I mentioned earlier, my American flag bag portion is much bigger than the lining bag portion. So I'm ending up having to just make a little pleat. And I decided my pleat was going to be right in the middle of my bag. But your pleat can be on the edges, and that's probably the best thing to do. But I wanted to show you guys in case you had, like, again, adversity. You had to go through adversity. So there was the pleat right there. And now I'm just going along, and I am putting ever so slightly of an edge on this. I actually took the edge of my fabric, and if you look inside your presser foot, there is basically a right needle position, which is just like this little opening to the where your needle comes up and down. I can see the very edge of that American flag bag in that, up against the edge of that opening. That's how close I'm getting to the very edge. Okay, and I know it's hard to see, but there's no way to videotape that with my equipment. If I had a big, Universal Studios sort of setup here, I'm sure I could show you that with the three-dimensional GoPro camera or something. I don't know. But anyway, so we're just putting a very, 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 very small sewing edge on that. And that's just to keep the lining from flopping in and flopping out. That's basically to keep everything, the lining on the inside and the bag on the outside. And now I'm showing you that once you grab those two loops, the bag flops over ever so perfectly and makes what looks like an American flag. Just like that. Now take this moment to cut off all your loose threads. Okay. And now we're going to attach the handle. Now, the reason I picked this leash, this dog leash, is because I wanted to be able to, for people who have issues getting them on and over their heads, you can actually unclip one side. But for the other side, we're going to attach it to the D-ring by looping the whole leash through the handle around the D-ring. And it's going to end up with that Windsor knot looking thing. And then we'll just clip the other side. And that's it. I hope you really enjoyed this tutorial. I decided not to add a fastener because the way the bag flops open. But you guys could if you wanted to. A button or a pin would look cute. I hope you really enjoyed this tutorial. If you do, give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions at all, please leave them in the comments down below. Don't forget to share this video with friends and family and anybody who might be interested in making one of these, making it, sharing it, learning a new sewing project, adding a handle to a bag, any of that stuff. And if you haven't yet, click subscribe, and when you do, a little bell will pop up. When you ring that bell, YouTube will let you know whenever I upload a new video. And as always, you take care, God bless, and we'll see you next time. Bye!